Welcome to Learn English Journey. My name is Olivia Sterling, and tonight I want to tell you about a Halloween party that changed the way I see myself. I study on a small university campus where the trees turn copper in October and the old library looks like a ship made of stone. During the day, bicycles glide past the science building and coffee cups travel from lecture to lecture in careful hands. At night, when the lamps come on, the pathways glow like thin rivers of gold. Our campus has a tradition called the Night of Masks. Every year, on the last Friday of October, students wear costumes and gather at the old observatory on the hill. There's music, apple cider, and a strange game prepared by the Literature Society. They call it the Midnight Clue. At exactly midnight, someone in a dark cloak walks through the party and drops a sealed envelope on the steps. Inside is a riddle. If you solve the riddle, you follow clues around campus until you find the final message. Most years it's a poem or a small prize, but this year, the envelope hid a different kind of secret, one with my name written inside it, whether anyone else knew it or not. I had 2 reasons to avoid the party. The first reason was Henry. We met freshman year in an intro philosophy class and became the kind of friends who can talk for 3 hours without finishing coffee. He played guitar at open mics. I wrote articles for the student paper. Our lives ran side by side, like railroad tracks that almost touched. Somewhere last spring, those lines split. We stopped writing, stopped showing up. I told myself we were busy. The second reason was a story everyone on campus seemed to believe about me. I had written an article about unfair housing fees. The piece won a prize, and part of the prize money funded a small scholarship for an anonymous student in the arts. After that, rumors grew like ivy, that I had exposed people just to look brave, that I had taken credit for work that wasn't mine, that I had used the prize to lift my own friends. None of it was true, but rumors are patient plants. They climb everything in their path. Still, something inside me wanted to stop hiding. I didn't own a clever costume, so I wore a long black coat, tied a satin ribbon over my eyes as a mask, and tucked a pen behind my ear out of habit. The air smelled like dry leaves and cinnamon as I walked up the hill to the observatory. The dome of the old telescope was a silver coin against the sky. Strings of orange lights hung from the trees. Paper bats turned slowly in the breeze. You could hear the band warming up and the sticky pop of caramel apples near the food table. I stood near the edge of the crowd. My breath made a small cloud in the cold air. I told myself that I could leave after 15 minutes and no one would notice. Then someone touched my sleeve. "Olivia," a voice said. I knew the voice. I turned and found Henry wearing a simple costume, dark jacket, white shirt, and a thin black mask across his eyes. On someone else, it might have looked dramatic. On Henry, it just looked honest, as if he was telling you, yes, I am wearing a mask, and also, yes, I am still me. You came, he said. His mouth tried to be casual, but his eyes were careful. I did, I answered. I wasn't sure. I'm glad you're here, he said. Do you want cider? We stood near the table while volunteers poured steaming cups. You could hear laughter, the soft squeak of the telescope turning, the low hum of 100 conversations. Henry told me he had started helping in the archive room under the library. Dusty boxes, old yearbooks, photographs from a time when everyone wore hats. It's quiet down there, he said. Quiet in a good way, the kind of quiet that keeps secrets without hurting anyone. I told him my classes were heavy this term, but that I liked the weight. I liked the feeling of my brain waking up to a new idea like a window opening. We talked about small things. We avoided the big thing. After a while, the music grew softer. A bell rang midnight from the chapel, 12 clear notes that floated down the hill. The crowd turned toward the stairs of the observatory because everyone knew what came next. From the shadow of the dome, a figure in a dark cloak appeared. The person didn't speak. They carried an envelope sealed with red wax. They placed it on the top step, looked once at the crowd, and vanished as quickly as they came. Someone shouted, "Open it," and the first row pressed forward. The envelope passed from hand to hand until it reached the leader of the Literature Society. A woman dressed as a compass rose. She broke the seal and read, "Find the room that counts the hours, where faces circle sky and stone. The secret waits beneath the tower, in drawers of wood, not digital, not phone," people whispered. I felt the answer rise in my body before I had words for it. "The clock tower," I said to Henry, "and the old card catalog under it." He was already smiling. "Come on," he said. "Run." We ran down the path, past the science building and the row of oaks, across the small fountain that holds coins and wishes. We pushed through the heavy door at the base of the clock tower and slipped inside the library just before a graduate assistant locked up. The staff recognized Henry from the archives. He lifted a hand and said, "We'll be quick." The lower floor of the library is all quiet wood, long tables, old lamps, the smell of paper and time. At the far wall stood the abandoned card catalog, 2 tall chests of tiny drawers with brass handles, the kind you see in movies made before the internet. A small paper bat hung from one corner on a thread. Someone had tied a thin orange ribbon to the bottom drawer. "This one," I said. We pulled the drawer open. Inside lay a single index card, yellow with age, but written in fresh ink. The letters were neat, almost formal. "What was borrowed the year the lights went out? Seek the ledger where names are signed by hand. The answer hides on page 11, line 5. Find it, and you'll understand." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The year the lights went out. On our campus, that phrase meant the storm 3 years ago when power failed for 2 days, and everyone carried flashlights through the hallway tunnels. That was the week I first wanted to be a reporter. I borrowed a small recorder from the library to interview students who slept on classroom floors. I had returned the recorder late and apologized so much the librarian laughed and gave me a free pen. "The circulation ledger," Henry said. "They keep it in the archive room. Hand signatures. We can get in." We moved quickly. The archive room door was heavy and had a window shaped like a mailbox slot. Henry unlocked it with a key the supervisor had lent him earlier that evening. He had been helping set up a tiny display of vintage Halloween photos for the party. We went inside. If you have never been in an archive, imagine a place that smells like the inside of a cedar box. There are narrow aisles of gray metal shelves and boxes labeled in pencil. Student theater programs, 1975 to 1990. Faculty minutes, 1962. Newspaper clippings. Events. In the back sat a long wooden table and, on it, a black ledger as big as a family Bible. Henry opened it with careful hands and turned to page 11. My stomach tightened. On line 5 was my name. Sterling, Olivia, audio recorder, week of the storm. Next to my name was a stamp. It said, "Returned." Below it, in unfamiliar handwriting, someone had added a note, "Gift acknowledged." "What does that mean?" I asked. Henry's jaw flexed. There's more. He slid the ledger aside and lifted the lid of a shallow box on the shelf beneath the table. Inside were thin folders, the kind used for letters. He searched until he found one labeled Donations, Anonymous, Student Aid. He pulled out a single piece of paper and set it between us. I recognized the words before I registered the ink. It was the letter I had sent the finance office the summer after my article won the prize. I had asked them to accept part of the money to fund a small art scholarship for a student in need. I had signed it with an alias because I didn't want anyone to connect the gift to me or to my writing. I wanted the gesture to remain clean and quiet. At the bottom of the letter, in a different hand, I saw a short line, confirmed, recipient, H.M., Fine Arts. Henry's fingers were steady. H.M. is me, he said, not as a boast, but like a fact he finally understood. I wondered for months who did this. Tonight I was asked to prepare the clue. I'm the masked courier this year. When I checked the archive, I found your alias and recognized the storm week, the recorder, your handwriting. Olivia, I think the clues were designed to bring you here anyway. I just helped them along. The room felt both too small and too large. The walls were close, and my thoughts were wide. You knew? I asked. I suspected, he said. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. The campus rumors about your article, I hated them. I kept waiting for the truth to come out by itself, but sometimes truth needs an invitation. I stared at the letter. The ink was slightly smudged where my hand had rested. Back then, I believed I could do something good without being seen. Then, when people whispered that I was selfish, I stayed silent because I didn't want to turn kindness into a defense. I had let my silence become a wall between us all. Why didn't you tell me? Henry asked softly. It wasn't an accusation. It was a gentle question with an old ache inside. Because it felt safer, I said. Safer for the gift. Safer for me. I thought people would say I wanted attention. I thought if I said nothing long enough, the rumors would run out of breath. Instead, they learned to breathe without me. He nodded. I understand, he said. But you don't have to hide from your good work. You don't have to hide from us. We stood there, the two of us in the quiet boxes full of other people's memories. I felt something familiar inside my chest, the careful click of old fear trying to lock a door. I also felt something new, the simple courage of a hand on the knob, ready to keep it open. There's one more folder, Henry said. He pulled a thin package from the same box. It was a cassette tape in a plastic case with a label typed on a real typewriter. Oral Histories. Campus Staff. N. Sterling. Custodial. My breath stumbled. N. Sterling. My mother's name. She used to clean classrooms at night when I was a kid. She would come home with chalk dust on her sleeves and stories about the lives of books. Henry put the tape into an old player in the corner, and the room filled with a soft hiss. Then my mother's voice arose, warm, steady, a voice that always made me feel like good weather. I work the late shift, she said, because it pays a little more. You learn the campus at night. You learn where people leave their worries and where they leave their hopes. Once, during a storm, a girl borrowed a recorder to ask strangers how they were doing in the dark. The next summer, an anonymous letter arrived with a small gift for the arts. I like to think the two are connected. Sometimes kindness grows in the dark. My hand covered my mouth. The interviewer asked a few more questions, simple ones. My mother talked about pride, not the loud kind, but the kind that sits quietly in your pocket and warms your hand. The tape ended. The player clicked. I sat down. I didn't know she recorded this, I whispered. The archives knew, Henry said. They know a lot, and none of it is gossip. We walked back to the observatory in silence. The party was still alive, music rising, scarves and capes moving like waves. We stood at the edge of the crowd. The leader of the Literature Society thanked everyone for playing and announced that the first team to find the final clue would receive a basket of baked goods from the campus bakery. Students cheered. It seemed both too small and exactly right. Olivia, Henry said, you don't have to say anything tonight, but if you want to, I'm here. I did not owe the crowd a speech. I knew that, but I owed myself something, the chance to stand upright in my own story. I climbed the steps to the top of the observatory where the first envelope had been placed. My hands shook. I lifted my ribbon mask from my eyes and let it hang around my neck. Hi, I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. I'm Olivia Sterling. Some of you know me from the newspaper. A while ago I wrote about housing fees, and then I stayed quiet when people said I did it for attention. I didn't. I did it because I believe the truth should be big enough for all of us. Part of the prize from that article funded a small art scholarship. I kept it anonymous because I didn't want to use kindness as proof. Tonight I learned that the scholarship helped someone I care about. I also learned that my mother recorded her story in this library, under this hill, and her voice says that kindness grows in the dark. I think she's right, but I also think kindness can stand in the light. I didn't plan to cry, but one tear escaped anyway. The crowd wasn't loud. The silence was gentle, the way people go quiet in a chapel or in the moments before a favorite song begins. Then a first pair of hands clapped, then another, then enough that the sound became something warm. I felt my shoulders drop in a way they hadn't for months. When I stepped down, Henry was waiting. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't say finally. He simply reached into his pocket and handed me a tiny paper star cut from an old catalog card. On it, he had written, For finding your way, walk me to the bridge? He asked. We crossed the lawn, where the grass kept the day's heat like a secret. The stone path down to the river was lit by small lamps that made our shadows long and thin. You could hear a saxophone playing a soft tune from the party, and the sound floated after us like a ribbon. On the bridge we leaned over the railing. The water below was ink with threads of moonlight. Henry spoke first. I'm sorry I went quiet, he said. I thought giving you space was respect. Maybe it was also fear. I'm sorry I let rumors speak for me, I answered. I kept hoping they would run out of stories. He nodded. They will now. We stood there a while, our elbows touching. I thought about the letter with my made-up name, the ledger with my real one, and the tape with my mother's voice. I felt a string run through all of it, pulling the pieces into a pattern I could finally see. My life was not one story, but many, and I did not need to hide from any of them. I have a small plan, I said. I want to collect oral histories from campus staff again, new ones, not just faculty and students, the people who carry keys and keep the lights working and know where the quiet places are. I want to put their voices on the university website and in the library, not as proof, as a gift. That sounds like work worth doing, Henry said. His voice was certain and soft. If you want to volunteer, I know a person who is good with dusty boxes and careful labels. I smiled. I'll add you to the team. When we walked back toward the observatory, the band was playing a final song. People were tired and glowing, like lanterns after midnight. I felt tired too, but not from fear, from relief, from the work of telling the truth and the soft joy that follows. At the base of the hill, I stopped and looked up. The dome of the observatory caught a slice of moon. The orange lights trembled a little in the breeze. Someone released a handful of paper bats into the night, and they rose in a clumsy flock, beautiful because they tried. I don't know exactly how the rest of the year will unfold. Maybe Henry will help me record stories under the library while the snow builds in quiet corners on the quad. Maybe we will drink coffee that goes cold because we are talking too much about something that matters. Maybe the rumors will shrivel from lack of attention and fall away like old leaves. I do know this. A secret brought me to the party, but the truth is what carried me home. On some future October night, when the campus gathers again under strings of light, I hope I will be there without a mask, not because I refuse to play, but because I finally learned how to belong. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with your friends. Comment below with your country and city. We love seeing where our Learn English Journey family is listening from. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories and English lessons that help you grow in vocabulary, fluency, and confidence. Your support truly helps us create meaningful content. See you in the next video on Learn English Journey.